is extremely interesting here in New York because of a couple of reasons. One, you're following Dave Gettleman. Guess what? That's going to make you popular. No matter what you do, you're not Dave Gettleman. And I know that sounds insane and kind of crass and rude, but it's true. Like, not being Dave Gettleman is going to make you popular. You're also going to be able to pick your own head coach. I think that's the way the Giants are going to do it, barring a Jim Harbaugh coming to town, somebody with enough cachet to say, no, I want this guy to be my GM. Some of the names that they've interviewed: Rand Carthen, 49ers Director of Player Personnel; Ryan Cowden, Titans VP of Player Personnel. I think Jonathan Jones may have reported that first.
Who had the connection to Joe Judge?
That's right. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson, NC State's own, High Point, North Carolina's own Adrian Wilson, both from Quentin Harris, the Cardinals Vice President of Player Personnel; Adrian Wilson, Cardinals Vice President of Pro Personnel; Joe Schoen, Bill's Assistant GM; Ryan Poles, Chief Executive Director of Player Personnel; and Adam Peters, 49ers Assistant General Manager. Also, Monty Ossenford, Titans Director of Player Personnel. These are, I think these are names that are probably not on the radar in a big way for some of these teams, for, just for like the general fan. But these are some good names that the Giants are actually looking at. They said they were not going to go in-house with Kevin Abrams, and, getting away from what has not worked with the Giants is probably smart. Like, you need some new blood in New York to try and come in and take over, right? And run that organization, I think.
So a couple of things. One, just peeling it back. Okay. So they made their general manager switch after they were 11-5 and going from Jerry Reese to Dave Gettleman. Okay. That is the last time that they were double digits since that switch.
Actually, I think that, because I was looking at this too. I was looking at this, and it was, I think it was when they benched Eli for Geno Smith. I think it's when they fired Jerry Reese and Ben McAdoo. So I think Reese was actually fired mid-season. If I'm correct me if I'm wrong. Because they got because I thought the same thing as you. I thought they fired him after, because he spent all the money in free agency. They go 11-5. They make the playoffs, lose to Green Bay after the boat game. And then he came back the next year, but they were like 3.
Was it mid-season? Mid-season? Okay. Well,
and the only reason I know that too is because I saw a Giants writer tweeting out, Jerry Reese won 2 Super Bowls and they fired him mid-season. Dave Gettleman gets a retirement ceremony before his final game.
So yes, and my point that I'm trying to make is that that it was after an 11-5 accomplishment the year before is basically what I'm trying to get at. And so then you have, but thank you for that. But then you have the coaching switch of going from Coughlin to McAdoo to Spagnuolo to Shermer and Joe Judge, and since 2015, it's been 1, 2, 3, 4 names coming upon a 5th name for this time. So that's just, the number, that's just the number one thing. And then you're talking about, how do you go about the change? So I understand there's a lot of ire from the Giants fans with regards to the job they feel Joe Judge has done. We can have a debate as to whether he should have gotten the job based on his resume going in, though there is some precedent for special teams people like John Harbaugh, or just even, you look at Mike Tomlin and his, resume coming in before he started, all this other stuff. You can have this debate, but nonetheless, it ended up at a 4-13 season. But since you were there, and it was in the midst of a contract that had 3 years remaining on it, $5 million per, it's like, what is the best decision? Because they constantly keep allowing a little bit of time and then cycling after that, right? But you talk about, okay, and I guess this is the point that I'm trying to make. This is how you knew that what was going to happen was not going to include hiring a GM and that GM making a decision. How many names did you just name there on that list that they're looking at for GMs? How many was on that list?
It was around 10.
10?
8 total, excuse me.
8? So Will, if I asked you let's just go through the thinking that was out there. And every time I kept hearing this, I was shaking my head. I'm like, that's not the case. How long do you think it would take to get through 8 GM interviews? Just roughly.
I
Just
mean,
roughly.
like the absolute fastest you could do it if you are let's say all these guys are out of all these guys are out of the playoffs. I think you give a day to each one, right? You're not banging these out in like 3 days, are you? I mean,
At best, if we wanted to go on the fast end, let's just say if you're turboing through this, though the Giants are the team not to turbo through this, would be 4 days, 2 a day, right?
Yeah, that's probably. I think that works. I think that works.
At best, that's what you're doing, though. That's not what I think you should be doing, right? And I think that these candidates should be getting. That's another complaint I'm hearing out on the cycle right now, as far as not feeling like you have enough time, to really fully prepare like you would want to, particularly from coaching candidates out there. But if you were to do so, you're already behind because you're waiting to make this decision on Joe Judge. Then you have 8 candidates, per what you're telling me, Will, a minimum of 4, most likely at a week. And that's not even including, Will, the second round of interviews.
Correct.
For your finalists. Wait a minute. Then naming your candidate. And by the way, Will, are you hiring your coach the day that you sign the GM? No. So then that means you're another week and a half to 2 weeks behind, which if you're trying to get your perfect combination never made sense. So everybody that was saying, oh, well, this is not it because, the GM is going to decide. No, that timeline never made sense. It was either he was in or he was out.
Yep, absolutely. You can't. And the Giants, I think, in what you were saying too about how they like the timing of these contracts too, like the Giants. So that when the Giants fired Jerry Reed, like they kept having these overlapping GMs and coaches, and you need to like not just for the the synchronicity, I guess. I don't know what word I'm looking for. Like you want the guys to be on the same page. You don't want to be bringing in coach and then fire the GM.
The only thing that I think that I know that was being considered, and I think is if you're already, and this is Giants fans will kill me, but if you're already in the boat of Joe Judge, right? That's why I keep putting it's a different conversation as to whether he should be in the boat, right. But given that he's in the boat, and you still can have miraculous turnarounds. There was once upon a time when the Giants players, the OCU Manuras, the Justin Tucks, the Michael Strahans were not pro Coughlin.
Did not like Tom Coughlin at all.
And they had to have, and they had a GM change, I believe it was 2006 or something like that. And then Coughlin represented his case and they ended up staying with all this other stuff. So they've been that round. And although the records were better at that point than what we see with Joe Judge now, but it's also a different pool of talent at the time via what the GM situation was. So that's all, you can go there. But my point is that I feel like it was a viable consideration to bring in a GM and not go for a coach the first year. And hear me out here, because the thinking is that you're not winning the Super Bowl anyways the next year. You're most likely not even going to be in the playoffs. So if you're really trying to find a good GM candidate and not trying to rush as they've done, spend your time on really, really, really making sure that you have the GM that you want. Let him use the year to assess everything, and then the following year come back and say, okay, now we're going into it with time with the coaching search instead of everyone rushing and racing against one another. Huh?
Well, and it gives you, as a GM, it's sort of like when a head coach inherits the old coach's young quarterback. It gives you sort of a free pass where you can have that year, you struggle and you're like, sorry, Joe, but you knew this was coming. I do think, though, that I think what happened with the Giants is they got enough candidates of this like 8 list who sort of either through back channels or maybe explicitly said it for some of them, like, look, I'm not going to take this job if the coach is already, I don't, if the coach is in place. I think that, plus the fans reacting and the way that the final 2 weeks of the season went down, it just was too much. So let me ask you this: what do you see a particular direction for the Giants?
So one, I just want to just kind of what you were just saying right there. And then yes, to answer your question, as far as some of the reasons that you're saying, I think there's always a measure of back channeling because, right, that's just what happens in the NFL to kind of figure out. But I don't think it's as heavy as you think with people saying, I'm not coming there if this person is there, because honestly, strategically, from a chessboard move, it actually buys the GM one more year for whatever his tenure is going to be. If you're looking at your own longevity, because you have a built-in year and excuse. So that's just one. And then, yes, the fan base. Also want to add in there Aaron Rodgers making the comment on Pat McAfee's show, making fun of Joe Judge and that going viral. That certainly was another thing to add to we can talk about whether we thought that was gratuitous or not. But nonetheless, that happened. And then you asked me, what do I think? So I'll put it in what I think they should do. And then, what perhaps will happen. What I think they should do, if I were Mr. Marr, would be to hire a GM who's actually been a GM before. Someone on another team was suggesting to me John Dorsey, and they were really making a case for Dorsey because of his history of bringing in talent that actually really worked out to be good talent. And it's very hard to argue when you really dive into his resume with that of what John Dorsey's ability to do that has been. If you bring in a general manager if you bring in a candidate to bring a general manager that has not done that before, you're essentially doing in the head coach quadrant, the GM quadrant, what you were doing in the head coach. They're going to be learning on the job. There's nobody that you mentioned on that list that is certifiable.
They don't have any. Yeah, there's no experience.
There's no GM experience. Like, this is why, Will, sometimes I literally sit back when I'm reporting stories and I just watch and listen to people. And I'm just like, we're going to have the GM come and he's going to make the decision. And, the GM is going to right the ship. And, Joe Judge shouldn't have got the job because he didn't have an experience. Well, let's go down the list of the GMs that are being talked about, and no one has been in the chair.
I'm with you. It's something that you've I'm laughing. So I'm laughing. Apparently, like I did these underdog playoff commercials. It's like a fantasy game. I've gotten like 10 texts or comments in the last like 48 hours where people are like, all I hear is your name on this ad and it's driving me, or your voice on this ad and it's driving me insane.